We are here with Mark Barcus today of Cow Camp Saddlery. Mark, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the leather industry.
Well, kind of started out as a cowboy, chasing them around while they were alive, all horseback, trying to keep them alive, and then as they died, I found out that you could turn them into some really cool stuff, so we started playing with leather. I started when I was in 4-H, about 9 years old. Before that, my dad had tools, and so we were always banging on it, but probably wrecked more tools than I made any projects.
Okay.
And from there, it just, as I got into high school, junior high and high school, I wanted to cowboy even more, and trying to find the gear that I liked was just hard to find at that time, and so I started studying pictures out of Western Horsemen's and trying to create my own chaps and stuff that of the styles I liked, and so pretty much spent all my waking hours when I was supposed to be doing homework, working on leather items in my bedroom or out in the shop, building stuff, building tools. Some of the tools I didn't have, so we had to make. So that's kind of how I got started in it, and it's just progressed from there every year. Of course, once you get working ranches, somebody sees a pair you have, and can you build a pair? And of course, somebody like myself, it's all about don't challenge me or because I'll figure it out. And so we built lots of stuff that probably didn't turn out all that good, but it was all learning experience and learned it. As I'd like to say, a lot of cows died in vain for me in the early years. There was a lot of them that didn't turn out.
Fair enough. So cowboying in Cody, Wyoming.
Well, it wasn't in Cody; it was in Cheyenne.
Okay.
I grew up Wheatland, Cheyenne, Wyoming, and then moved around for a few years after that. And in 2017, I lost my ranch job. We moved to town, set up a shop, and virtually was making a go at it just in a shop when the Buffalo Bill Center of the West opened up their apprenticeship program there in Cody, and so somehow I ended up applying and got the application, or one of the 3 apprenticeship program applicants was myself, and from there it's been quite a ride. That's where the school really took off.
The school, that's right. So you have your shop there in Cody, and then you do a school. So tell us about the school and what part you play in that and how it got started.
Before we left Lusk, there was I'd been working in a forum group and on Facebook answering lots of questions. And so back in 2009 or 10, we created a how to make Chinks DVD that came with a full-size pattern pack. It's 2.5 hours of instruction. And we did that. And of course, when you put something out like that, there's always a lot of questions that come back. So I spent many hours answering questions, and it kind of dawned on me that there might be a place for someone to come and spend some time and do some learning, kind of a deal. And so in 2017, maybe 18, must have been about 2019, we kind of did a couple of short classes with just a few people, and it really went pretty well. But then, of course, the application or the apprenticeship program started up. And at that time, my goal was to really get better at building saddles. And so that was that program. It was a saddle building program, and we were going to build lots of saddles. Unfortunately, it lasted 9 months instead of 5 years. and due to unforeseen circumstances. So it kind of teaching has always kind of been there, but at the museum we talked to 300 people a day. And we answered questions like, what plant does leather come from? Does it come on big rolls or bolts like fabric? Those were the questions that we were fielding.
Okay.
And so we learned kind of that there's a need for an education, not only for makers, but for the general public about what quality is. I mean, when people walk up and go, I wouldn't spend more than $50 for a belt, and you're like, and you break it down to them, you explain to them about, what leather costs and how long it takes to build something. You're letting them feel quality leather and stuff. A lot of them would turn around and immediately be happy to spend $300 to $500 on a belt because they understood what it was. Well, as that kind of progressed, I got to noticing that there's a lot of makers out there that don't have a lot of skill because where do you find that information? There's just that information is hard to get. When I started, you'd go into a saddle shop, they'd cover their work up. They didn't share anything. So
Take a coffee break.
Yeah, it was like they'd talk to you all day and not get anything done, but they weren't going to show you anything either. Yeah. And so I spent a lot of time in Cheyenne at a shop until the one guy finally said, I'm going to quit covering it up. He didn't give me a lot of help, but he did. At least I could watch some. And later I took my very first pair of chaps to him and had him critique them. And as I walked out of there, I was like, wished he'd held back a little bit. But as I look back at that today, when I build a pair of chaps, everything that he told me to make sure I wasn't doing is on my checklist still today. So because of that, it just kind of got me to thinking that there's a need to help other people learn more about the leather industry and how to make stuff. I still fielding hundreds of questions on, well, why does this happen, or why are you cutting it that way, or whatnot. And so that kind of led us into an actual, man, we need to do something. And it's not just an attaboy, good job kind of a situation. We really need to say, hey, you're doing really good, but we can do better if we do this and this and this. And so that's kind of what happened. Is when they shut the program down at the museum, I didn't have a backup plan. And I was going to do some classes like once or twice a year, take some personal days and do a class. And of course, God for us is a big influence in our life, and he's like, well, I guess you're going to start a school this week. And we ended the job at the museum on January 15th, and February 2nd or 3rd we had a full class of 2 people coming in to learn to build chaps. And I think that year we taught 5 or 6 classes that spring.
Wow. Okay.
And one of them was with Josh that has won the back-to-back chap contest at Pendleton. So
he learned it all from you.
He didn't learn it all from me. I can't take credit for that, but we did help him on just a few things, and that's what our goal is to help people push themselves beyond just being a leather worker, but how to be good at it.
And so is all the classes you teach chaps, or do you do more than that?
So it started out as chaps, and then of course people wanted to learn to build some belts, and they wanted to do carved belts. And so we do a few carving belt classes, Our belt classes are geared towards the carving part, and tool control, and they get to build a belt, but it's not about the belt first and foremost. Our chap classes, they're geared towards building a pair of chaps, but it's geared towards being a maker, not a chap builder, just somebody that builds chaps. Our classes are 5 days. We cover everything from building a blueprint of what you're going to build, so that you working with the customer can give you their information, and then you help them to figure out what it is that they need or want for the area they're in. We discuss little types of leather. We talk about casing leather. We talk about some basic stamping. We take measurements. On an average, I think there's 9 measurements that we take, and then we take a piece of paper and create a pattern off of those measurements. I like to teach them to build their own pattern, not just use my cookie cutter type pattern and just move it around, although that works. I think as a maker, you need to be able to understand the measurements you take and then create the pattern. So then they'll do that, and then we'll, in this class, it's a little more in-depth in the fact that they can put pockets in, and they can push themselves in a lot of ways that normally we wouldn't, two-tone fringe, things of that nature, and how to lay all that out and how it all goes together. And so a lot of them leave not just a chap maker, but a better leather worker, because they understand tools. The first 2 days is like a book class. I mean, it's all paperwork. There's a lot of hands-on feeling leather, but we're breaking down how the cowl works, how the neck moves, and how that leather is different than in the back or the hip or the belly. And so it's a really intense, in-depth class. So that's our goal. It's not so much that we teach projects as much as the skills to create projects.
That's fantastic, and it's so important. If there was one piece of advice that you would give to somebody before they came out to Cody to take your class, what would that piece of advice be?
Oh, that's a really good question. I guess the biggest thing that I would say is that don't get too confused watching too many YouTube videos.
Like this one.
Like this one? No, this one's different. The how-tos. A lot of those, it creates so much confusion that when they get there, they're like, I thought, or, man, that's not how they do it. And it's like, I understand that but a lot of the videos out there, unfortunately, in what we're doing are guys that haven't built them for very long. And so, man, it's really hard in a lot of ways to break down some of those myths that are in there, that it's easy. Chap making's not easy. Leather work is not easy. It takes a lot of discipline and a lot of thinking it through and planning, and that's probably the biggest thing that we want to teach, is that construction is far more important than the tooling that goes on it. If they don't fit and function right, all the tooling videos and all the tooling you did is not going to make them look any better or function any better. And so that's a huge thing. So I guess come with an open mind and come willing to learn, and impress me with how well you want to get better, and how that's the one thing that I've noticed that all of my students, even those that have been doing leatherwork, one guy, I think he's 60 some years old and been doing it since he was 12. He says, man, I learned more in a week here than I did taking 8 or 10 classes like at Sheridan, and those shows that are short classes where you don't get that one-on-one intense training.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess that's the thing, is come open-minded and prepared to learn, and
right.
that's if you don't have that, it's going to be hard to learn.
So while you've been teaching everyone, and you've kind of had this journey from crafting and making things of your own to the museum to business ownership and then teaching, what is the biggest thing that you've learned throughout all of that?
To probably not fall into the myths that are out there. There's a lot of them, you know. Research everything that you hear. Don't take what I teach and go, well, that's what Mark teaches. Take that and go, this, I'm going to go try it and see. Is it work? Is it right?
Take it for a test drive.
Take it for a test drive. I tell all my students that I'm not going to tell you, this is why I do it, and leave it, well, that's just why I do it. There's going to be a reason behind it. And I'm never going to tell you, well, I learned from so-and-so, and that's how they did it. I'm not going to give you that as an answer. I might say that, but it's going to be backed up with it, and this is why it works, or this is why I don't do it. Because I've taken stuff that I've learned from different people at different times from all over, and it's not just in the leather industry. I mean, my horse training and my ranching career and all that. I like to know why I'm doing what I'm doing, why I hold the knife the way I do, or whatever. I don't just, well, that's what I was told to do. I want to break that down, and so I break down swivel knives, and I break down head knives, and I break down my stamps, and why when you tip your tool this way it creates this look. So those are things that drive me, and I think that drive is the reason that I want to share so much with other people about that same thing.
It's so good to pass along the legacy and the craftsmanship to different generations. That's fantastic. What are you most proud of that you've done throughout all of this?
Oh, probably raising 2 boys. No, there's a lot of stuff that I can be proud of, but probably the things that I'm proud of is when I see students moving on and having flourishing businesses and winning shows and stuff like that. I mean, that just, Josh, when we competed last year together in Sheridan, and I said, I don't care where I place, as long as it's below you. I want you to be higher than me, because that means what I helped you with pushes you on, and so for me that's probably the biggest thing is seeing the students move on. That's the greatest accomplishment.
You're here at the Illume Connect Studios, and what are you teaching here?
Well, we're going to teach some stuff related to casing and tempering, and how to break that down and not make it just as simple as, well, we cased it and it's ready to go. We're trying to break down how the fiber of the cow hide is and how it works, and how our moisture content creates burnish and creates the color that it needs. And we're not relying on chemical dyes and antiques to finish that color. Our ultimate goal is that we can take that piece of leather and make it speak for itself through the casing process and tempering process, and then if we decide to put antiques on it, just enhances it. So that's one of the main things. We'll talk about some tools and different things and how those tools are like paintbrushes, and that tool with the burnish and the texture creates different effects and stuff like that.
And there's so much more to the leather industry. We're made up of a community of small businesses, large businesses, beginners, and experts. So if there was something that you know now that you wish you knew 10 or 20 years ago, what would that be?
It's such a journey. I don't know if there's any one thing that I wished I knew 20 years ago, 30 years ago when I started, even 40 years ago. Other than don't be afraid to talk to those guys. Take those guys at the top and break their work down, study their work, and don't be afraid to ask them questions. I kind of started doing this about 20 years ago. Was instead of asking somebody that I really admired their work how to do it, creating a project or a pattern and then sending it to them and saying, hey, I'm struggling with this. How can I make it better? And that really breaks down the barrier of, yeah, I want to help you, to, oh, you're just trying to steal what I'm doing, or you're trying to copy what I'm doing. Troy West helped me a lot in a couple of projects. Just, I drew him up and I'd send him and I said, man, this just doesn't look right. And he'd go, well, if you twist this pedal this way, or you do this, change this a little bit. Those are things that I think I was afraid to do early on that I'm not afraid to do now. And I think that's probably the one thing I would tell young guys that are starting out, young people, old people that are starting out, new in the business. Don't get your feelings hurt when they tell you you're not doing a good job, because they're not telling you you're not doing a good job. They're telling you you can do better. And I think we hear more times than not, oh, you're doing a bad job. And to me, when I say that's really nice, but this would make it better, it's not dragging you down. It's helping you go forward. Mm-hmm. But I think what we hear, and I think I heard this for a long time, was, oh, well, he doesn't like my work, or they don't think I'm good enough, or whatever. And so you pulled the negative out of what they were saying. Mm-hmm. And you can't pull the negative out of it. You got to look for that positive, and that positive is, okay, yeah, this is a nice piece, but if we do this, or you do that and you do it, and you study it, and you figure out how to make that work, your work moves forward rather quickly. Where if you're constantly going, well, I'm not good enough, or he said that it didn't look right, and you take the negative out of it, you get burnt out, and you'll just stay there. You're just happy with where you're at. Mm-hmm. And I worked at the museum under a really, really, really good leatherworker who beat me up so bad I was almost ready to get rid of all my tools 3 years ago. But through that, I think it made me a better teacher, because I understand that you can't beat people down, but on the other side, you can't just say good job and walk off. If they're not doing a good job and you're just saying good job and you walk off, what did you do for that person? You didn't help them at all.
Not at all.
You just give them an okay to be okay, instead of a that's okay, let's get better. And I think that's the thing that we really, 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 as leather workers, experienced leather workers, have to convey to the people that are coming up. I thought about it long and hard for a while, that if I'm only trying to be as half as good as the guy that I look up to, and the guy that's looking up to me is only trying to get half as good as I am, and the guy that's looking up to that next person is only going to try and get half as good, it's not going to be long, and we're going to be way less than we ever could be, just because we're not striving to get better. If I only plan to get half as good as Troy West, my goal isn't set high enough.
That's incredible insight. I think we can all take that into everything we do with business, with leather crafting, anything. Take it in a positive way, and invest in yourself. And then if you're the expert in that moment, invest in others.
Yeah.
By saying what might not be the easiest thing to say.
You can be considered the bad guy pretty easy, but you have to let people know how they can get better, or they're never going to grow.
Absolutely. All right. Where can people find you? Are you going to shows this year? How do they find your classes?
So right now, we're advertising on Facebook, mainly. Cow Camp Saddlery on Facebook, or you can get a hold of me at Mark Barcus. We are judging the chap show in Sheridan, so we'll be around the Sheridan show. This year, we're really going to try and up the game, and we've got some templates in the works that will help with fringe cutting and layouts of some chap yokes and stuff we're working on, that hopefully by Pendleton, we'll get to go to Pendleton and possibly have a booth set up there and be able to sell those. We do sell patterns for everything from shotgun chaps to cannel bags to spur straps, medicine bags and stuff like that, and those can be found at cowcampsaddlery.com.
Perfect.
So yeah, we're trying to get to a few shows. We do have a class we're trying to get scheduled up in the last couple of weeks in July, where Rocky Minster is going to come to our shop and spend a week or a few days teaching layout and stuff from that Porter area that he grew up in, and some stuff like that, kind of show us some of that. So trying to get some different things rolling, but it's slow. Yeah, starting a business and growing a school and trying to figure out how to put it all together has been quite interesting.
It's been so great getting to know you today, and I appreciate you coming and chatting with me. Thanks, everyone, for joining us here today on the Shop Talk YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and be back for more interviews just like this one.
Illume Connect is your place to connect with the world of leathercraft. Illume Magazine, Learn with Illume, and Illume Events. All of these outlets are places to learn more and be involved in the leather crafting community. We hope to see you soon in print, online, or at one of our events.